How are you guys? Let's start our chapter 8 regarding the unemployment. I decided to cover this really quickly because the concept, unemployment rate is very straightforward. Whether you have watched the video, let's say I recommend it on Canvas regarding your body language may shape who you are. Before we talk about unemployment, we need to have a decent job first, that you guys are all the potential management. So my recommendation is you should be well prepared. That video tells you something that you can have like a quick win, meaning that the different, your postures, your body language can somehow help you to gain your confidence, right? So I don't talk too much about it, but I want you to really watch that video, okay? Postures, different body shape, boost your testosterone level, right? And then make you powerful. I don't have the chance to ask you to do your self-introduction. Usually I ask a student in the classroom that to introduce themselves, use 1 minute. I call this 1 minute elevator speech. So this is important because not only you needed to practice what to say to organize your language, right? But also you needed to show your confidence within this 1 minute. So there was a story long time. There was like, two guys, one guy that did his elevator speech and then get the promotion quickly. And the other guy tried to do the same, but he got fired because he did it very poorly. Once you have your boss, your senior manager, you meet your senior manager, you cannot pretend not knowing him, right? You have to say hello. You have to proactively introduce yourself and make sure that this is, this is for you. This is a very good opportunity to show your competence, show your value, right? This is good for your future interview. So I just put this here and then ask you to practice, to learn from the video, to practice yourself. We will cover this unemployment, and then the next chapter is about the inflation. Last time that we mentioned about the GDP growth rate, I think the concept itself is not very difficult, right, to remember, right? But the point is you needed to have up-to-date information. For example, the first quarter of 2020, we get a decrease of 4.8% of the GDP growth or the economic growth, right? Compared to the previous year or the previous quarter, which was like around the 2.1 plus. But again, this unemployment, I want you to figure out what is the percentage now. By end of March, we have hit the lowest over the half century. The unemployment was like a 3.5%, but now it jumped to another level because of this coronavirus, pandemic. But the point here is that this is another very important indicator regarding the macroeconomics. Chapter 8, the outline is like after the some definitions we will introduce regarding the patterns of unemployment, and then we also will, let's say that to discuss about the short run changes, the long run changes regarding this unemployment. Before we start the discussion, because first of all I mentioned about the interview, and then also I needed to remind you needed to be well prepared. Even if you have a job already, that doesn't mean this will be forever. So first of all, you can actively search a new job or be laid off by the company. Very likely you want to choose the first one, right? You want to proactively search a new job. Yes, that's correct. On the job market, although you have a job already, but it doesn't matter, right? First of all, you can learn new stuff, learning new skill, and then keep searching. Why not? If they pay higher, better benefits, higher salary, why not? Again, that you needed to be competent, right? You needed to, and then also that once you get that job, you have the decision to accept or not accept. So my point is, stay employed. So here's the definition that how we calculate that. Say we define the adult population as like employed, unemployed, and then out of the labor force. So the definition, I copied, pasted the definition underneath. Quick information, we have like a 164.6 million people, let's say defined as the labor force, right? So the labor force means employed plus the unemployed. So those out of the labor force, we are not calculate into this employment rate. Simply speaking, I have to mention about China, define some of those unemployed people as out of the labor force. And then immediately the unemployment rate decreased. Just show a very nice, very good number. So it's about how, I mean, there's the reason behind, the political reason behind. This is not the, the thing we want to talk about today, but just show you that how we get to these numbers, right? So the unemployment rate is the number of unemployed people divided by the total labor force. The labor force is unemployed plus the employed. So this is the definition. And then also that give you a quick glance that what is the situation in the United States. Just imagine the total population, or let's say that the working population, which is the age 16 above. I think all of us, you, me, we all belong to this work population, but it doesn't mean that you are in the job market, right? Or you are in the labor force. If you are a full-time student, you are not looking for a job, that probably means that you are out of the labor force. The pie chart is showing you that the percentage, or let's say the rate regarding the the employed, unemployed, and then the people out of the labor force. So the latest number regarding the out of labor force is 103.425 million. That's a big number, right? So as you can see, this is almost, let's say that this is almost about that 1/3 of the working population. So that's, I mean, although there are different reasons, why they out of labor force, so like students, armies, right? And then also probably that's also including those, in the prisons, and then maybe like those in the hospital, those kind of things. But the point here is this is still a very large number. And then that's another thing that the government needed to support or to feed those population. This is a big, huge burden that the government has to take the responsibility. The government collected our tax and then pay to this. So, and then that the understanding that this is the, our, let's say, current unemployment rate, I would give you the number immediately. Also, I ask you that you can find out April 2020, which is as high as 14.7%, which is really high. Our highest unemployment rate was in the Great Depression, that the highest unemployment rate achieved to 25%. Let's see the coronavirus pandemic, what will be the the highest unemployment rate in the following months. Okay, so I would let's say I will come back and then check that number with you later. Also, there are like a hidden unemployment rate. This is very difficult to detect. Why? Because we simply categorize employed, unemployed, and out of the labor force. So there are like people underemployed, or let's say part-time, or let's say they have like a temporary, even not part-time, they are like a temporary job, right? So those, and then also like those people, they're proactively looking for a job, but they could not find one, and then they are like on the edge. Okay, so you can categorize them like the unemployed, but also they will say, I give up because it's too difficult to find a good job, whatever. And then, they can be categorized out of the labor force. So this is more like the definition here give you that discourage the workers. Okay, but this is always like the argument, how can we accurately use those numbers with caution because always there's room, as I mentioned, there always the room to manipulate. Also, I said that I trust the US number more than the Chinese number, but I still be hesitated to say 100% I trust those, I believe those numbers, okay? That's my opinion. But always that we use this number, on a, let's say, monthly basis or like a quarterly basis to assess the current situation, to see the changes. This is okay. We needed to understand the situation. And also, there's a very important, let's say, signal, sent by those, unemployment rate. Why? Because if the unemployment is very, very high, that means it's very difficult to find a job. And then also for us, like stay in the schools, like this become like extremely difficult time, challenging time to find a good job, right? So for me, that I have said that trying to stay in the school and then prepare ourselves better, and then once everything turns back to normal, and then that might be the time to to really start searching. Okay, so always that to keep in mind that the right time and then preparation. Okay, labor force participant rate, the LFPR. As you can see, this is the total labor force divided by the total working population. The working population is age 16 above. Okay, so total labor force is just the one that we employed plus the unemployed. Yeah, as you can see that I also pasted the number for your reference. In 2020 April, that the 60.2% is the participant rate. So you have a rough idea regarding the situation. Okay, our participants rate, our employment rate, we needed to understand the current situation. Okay. And as you can see that this unemployment is closely correlated with the GDP growth or the GDP economic situation. Okay, so that means that if we have good economic growth, the GDP growth is good, then we have low unemployment rate, right? It makes sense that because we create a lot of new job and then we hire more people and then the unemployment rate will decrease. In the long run, we have the natural rate of unemployment. So that means that the people are changing their job, but they're on, from a previous job to the new job. And then there's always, or let's say that the development of technology will kind of obsolete some old, the traditional jobs. Point here is that there will be a so-called the natural rate. There will be, the range is around the 4% to 6%. So as you can see that here, although this is fluctuated all the time, but there are, let's say, more, stay in a certain range, but sometimes it's above that, sometimes it's below that. Just give you the example, a couple of months ago, again, 3.5% is way lower than the traditional or the natural rate of unemployment. So that's what our president is trying to, show up, lagging that his performance. If I draw a line here, somewhere here, that you can see this is a really, really low, unemployment rate. Always that all countries want to show a low unemployment rate. They have the motivation to push the unemployment rate lower. And then that also means that they want to boost the economic growth, right? So in the short run and also in the long run. That the genders, I'm not trying to, really spend time on this. You can take a quick look that, but usually that the female is more like have lower unemployment rate. So honest speaking, that in my previous job, we also prefer to hire, let's say a little bit older. Let's say that they married, they have like already have kids, and then they have very how to say, stable, families. That's always that we try to draw a picture regarding this. What is our the best, or let's say a good candidates to fill the position. But most of the time that you can see that female will have a little advantage regarding this holding a job, holding a position. Okay, that's also the age group. That makes sense, but honestly, that once we're getting older and older, we would consider more, to stay in the same position for longer because we have kids, we have family. So, but the younger, like at your age, that it's easy to switch the job, right? Always that you are you can find a new job because you are young, you are learning new stuff, and then you can find a higher paid or higher positions, whatever. But the point here is that what I want to tell you is keep learning. It doesn't matter what age, even like at my age, 40 or 50, always there are opportunities. We leave the door open. You don't want to shut the door. But if you shut the door, and then you have only one option left, which is, and then this is the race or ethnicity difference. So for me, this I would skip because this is always like a changing, right? And then it's this kind of discussion. And then if I put myself like Asian people, and then you probably see that the Asian will also have even lower, let's say the lower unemployment rates. Don't really pay attention to this fluctuation. One thing is very simple: as an individual, the government is not responsible for us, in terms of prepare ourselves. We are responsible for ourselves. So trying to make your own line, individual line, very low or even to zero. The next one that I have something that really want you to remember, because the unemployment by the government, by the BLS, we call the Bureau of Labor Statistics, define the unemployment through U1 to U6. So simply speaking, U1 is more strict than the U6. U6 is more like a very broad definition regarding that the unemployment. So what I want you to keep in mind is the U3, which is the total employed as a percentage of the labor force, which is I just showed you in the previous slides. This is usually the official unemployment rate. But U6 is more like the more accurate unemployment rate, which is, first of all, the number is much bigger, almost doubled, right? So I didn't check, but I attached a new report, the first quarter report regarding the unemployment rate for, like, say, in the optional reading, folder. Simply speaking, U6 is including more, as more people into this, unemployment group, or let's say the numerator. So it's called like including the total unemployed plus all persons marginally attached to the labor force. You can treat this as like the, part-time, temporary job, and also including those people, let's say sometimes that they are, working, for hours, for a couple of days or weeks, and then later on that they just stop working and then they want to enjoy their life, right? The U3 is very kind of critical or kind of strict definition compared to the U6. So that's a small diagram that I didn't keep drawing this, but as you can see, started from 2010, this is the time right after the financial crisis since 2008, right? And then we have the decreasing of the unemployment rate over the last almost 10 years. But then the pandemic just happened. And then you can imagine that now we are more like, this is immediately jump to 14.7%, something like this, okay? So just within one quarter. As I mentioned before, that if we want to compare the unemployment rate across countries, you need to be very careful, because most of the time, although how I can say, it seems that the rate, unemployment rate can be compared because it's more, I say it's all about the percentage of those unemployed, right, divided by the total labor force. But since, for example, that the China, that we have a lot of farmers, they are not categorized into the labor force. So you can, by taking them out of this equation, the unemployment can be very low or can be comparatively low. So there are, like say, the tricks behind that. And then there are different reasons because of the definition of the unemployment is different, right? And then also like the countries using different tools, you know, the sampling, the different sampling size, and then also like, you know, they are, whether they are talking about the urbanized or let's say including the rural area, there are different criteria. And then also like if the country is more like agriculture oriented country, okay, so we cannot compare with those underdeveloped or the developing countries directly.